Hello everyone. I'll cover one more game from the young German genius Vincent Keymer, the young international master that just won the Grenke Open held in Karlsruhe. In the two previous videos I covered his victories over Richard Rapport and Bowman, and both of these games he had the black pieces and he won with perfect defense. In the game I'm about to show you now, he won with such attacking brilliancy that I'm sure Mikhail Tal or Bobby Fischer wouldn't be ashamed to show this game as their own. He played against Gabor Papp, who is a Hungarian grandmaster rated 2600, so 200 points higher rated than young Vincent. And Vincent opened with pawn to d4, and Gabor Papp, once more underestimating Vincent Keymer, same as Richard Rapport did, he plays the red defense, or the Pillsbury defense as it's also known, d6. And the opening is not bad for black or anything, it's just uncommon and it's relinquishing too much of the center to white without too much counterplay. And unlike some other hyper-modern defenses, it doesn't give black that many chances out of the opening. So d6, Vincent of course is prepared for this as well. The red defense doesn't surprise him. Knight to f3, knight to f6, c4, immediately taking as much center as possible, g6. This now resembles a sort of a modern or a Pirt's defense, but the e pawn should have been on e4 instead of the c pawn on c4, and that would have been the modern or the Pirt's in that case. g3 now by Keymer. He goes for the kingside fianchetto, bishop to g7, bishop to g2, castles, and knight to c3. And in this position it's equal, both sides have something to play for. However, white has a lot more central control, and this is now actually transposing into a fianchetto king's Indian defense for black, but white is one tempo up compared to the normal fianchetto king's Indian. Knight b to d7, bishop to f4, e5, striking in the center. Gabor Papp is of course a strong grandmaster, so he won't fall without a fight. D takes e5, d takes e5, knight takes e5, knight to h5, challenging the bishop on f4, knight to d3, defending the bishop and saving the knight, because if he allowed Gabor to take the bishop, then the knight would be undefended on e5 and it would fall. So knight to d3, knight takes f4, knight takes f4, c6, solidifying the center and taking away the d5 square from white's pieces. Castles, queen to b6, challenging the b2 pawn, and this is the most sensitive square in white's position at the moment because of the very strong bishop on g7, and now the queen on b6. So knight to d3, defending b2, knight to e5, c5, queen to a5, b4, and queen to a3. And in this position, Vincent is showing his strength already. He's playing very aggressive chess and he isn't afraid to gambit a couple of pawns even in this position, and he's playing everything to get as much initiative as possible. And already he has a strong positional edge, even though engine-wise the position is equal. I would say that it's much easier to play for white because of one strength in his position, and that's the d6 outpost. The d6 square is so weak for black that if white is able to get a knight to d6, his position would be strategically completely winning already. And another thing is that black's queen, however dangerous it might look on a3, it's actually misplaced. Queen to c1 in this position by Vincent Keymer, offering a trade of queens. Of course, a 200 points higher rated grandmaster has to refuse. Knight to c4, but he accepts the trade of queens in one case, that white should take and then black would be a tempo up. But knight to e4 in this position, Vincent doesn't trade. Bishop to e6, queen takes a3, and now this is a very double-edged position and he had to trade queens because after this move black was threatening to take the rook in some positions, so he can't give Gabor any more time. Queen takes a3, knight takes a3, and now saving the rook with rook to c1. Knight to b5 in this position, and this was the first mistake the Hungarian grandmaster made. I'm sorry. There was one move that he could have played to remain equal in the position. After rook a to c1, one move that would have given him enough counterplay was a5, immediately crashing through white's queenside formidable pawn structure and weakening the c5 pawn, which is providing the d6 outpost. So after a5, the line would go something like knight to d6, bishop to g4, bishop f3, bishop takes, e takes, and now a takes b, knight takes b, and black would stand well. The position would be completely equal because the c5 pawn is very weak, the a2 pawn is weak as well, and the b4 knight is drastically misplaced. However, black has his weaknesses and the b7 pawn is about to fall, etc, etc. The position is equal and definitely much better than the game continuation for Gabor Papp. But after rook a to c1, he played knight to b5, which is a very defensive move and not a great continuation. And in this position, Vincent Keymer also missed the most precise move. What he should have played here was to challenge the d6 square even more indirectly by playing a4. And a4 is dislodging the knight from the defense of d6. It's as simple as that. It's also gaining space on the queen side, but the most important thing is that the knight wouldn't be able to defend d6. So after knight to d4, rook f to e1, he would have to defend e2 because black was threatening to capture the exchange. And now a5, and black would have counterplay, but white would stand much better. His position would be much more aggressive with the knights in the center and the rooks on the c and the e file. However, after knight to d6, knight to b5, he played knight to d6, which is an okay move. It gives white a slight edge, but it's offering black a chance to remove the knight from its outpost, and the passed pawn on d6 would be strong, but it would be easily stopped or at least blockaded by playing bishop to d7 in this position. So if black captures, white captures black black would be able to play bishop d7 immediately and blockade the pawn. However, black makes his second mistake of the game, and a much more serious one. He doesn't take the knight. He should have taken the knight, that was the only move. But he plays knight to c3, and now this means that Vincent Keymer's knight on d6 is going to be there forever. And this position is now strategically completely lost for black, believe it or not. His knight is so strong that it's controlling half the board, it's attacking b7, it's preventing the rooks from coming to c8 or to e8, and the e file is going to become the most important one in the position. And the knight, this is an octopus knight, like from Kasparov's game, the most famous one. I can't remember the opponent anymore. And after this move, knight to c3 by Gabor Papp, Vincent, all he has to do is defend the a2 pawn, so he plays rook to c2, rook a to b8, defending the b7 pawn passively, knight f4, challenging the bishop, bishop to d7, rook f to c1, now double attacking the knight and threatening to get two pieces for the rook, so knight to a4, another passive move, and now this is just busted for black, even though the material is equal, even though there's still two minor pieces and two rooks on the board for each. White has such a strong and dominant position because of his knight on d6 and the outpost, and the fact that black's rooks are stuck and they can't develop to e8. The b8 rook is stuck defending b7, and the knight on the rim is dim, as they say, so the a4 knight is just ridiculous. Now he continues with rook to d1. Once the job is done, the knight was removed from c3, he has to take over the more important file, and indirectly he is attacking the bishop on d7, so any knight discovery would capture the bishop. a6, rook to d3, preparing to double and controlling the c3 square at the same time, so not giving black the option to return to c3, rook f to d8, and now now Vincent Keymer plays Mikhail Tal-like move, which I found absolutely astonishing. And even though this game wasn't covered anywhere else, I think this is the most beautiful game of the Grenke Open in general, and definitely the best game Vincent Keymer played in all 9 rounds. And this move is definitely for the books. It's a tactical brilliancy that I'm not sure many of the world's top grandmasters would find. I'm wondering what Magnus Carlsen would play here, for example. But young Vincent played knight takes b7. And after knight takes b7, black's position is so lost that he should have resigned here. And Gabor Papp must have been devastated, must have been completely devastated after this move. And I only wish I could have seen his face after this move. And now, of course, rook has to take b7 because the knight is attacking the rook on d8. And if the rook on d8 moves, then the bishop on d7 is falling. And the point of the move is that after rook takes b7, now bishop takes c6, attacking both the b7 rook and the d7 bishop. And of course, if the rook moves, anywhere from the 7th rank, then the bishop is double attacked by the rook and by the bishop. And if the bishop moves, then the rook on d8 is falling. So, okay, Gabor Papp found the best continuation. It's simply to lose the rook for 2 pieces and a couple of pawns. So now after bishop takes c6, which is the only move, rook takes d8 with check. And after bishop to f8 defending, if you count the material, white has 2 rooks and a minor piece and 7 pawns. And black has 4 pawns and 2 minor pieces and 3 minor pieces with the rook. So definitely an unfavorable trade for black, because he now stands 2 points inferior when you count the material, and the position is just busted for black. Vincent Keymer played the brilliancy of the tournament, perhaps even of the year so far. Now rook to c8 by Vincent, challenging the bishop, not giving black time to capture on b4. And there was another move he could have played here instead of rook to c8, which is not a bad move, it's a great move, but there was one better move. After bishop to f8, he could have played knight d5. And if black takes, of course white is now threatening to check here and to dislodge the king and give a lot of headache to black. So if black takes with the bishop, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, black wouldn't have time to capture the b4 pawn, and this would just be an easy march until queening for the c pawn. So if, let's say, Vincent Gabor took the b4 pawn, so rook takes b4, c6, rook to b8, c7, rook to c8, rook to d8, challenging the rook. If he tries knight to b6, defending the rook, just rook to c6, and the position is completely busted. But Vincent Keymer didn't find that move. After bishop to f8, he played rook to c8, which is the second best move. Now bishop to d7, rook to a8, attacking a6, rook takes b4, c6, attacking the bishop and marching towards queening, rook to b1 check, king to g2, bishop to f5, attacking the rook, knight to d3, not moving the rook from the c file, but blocking with the knight, knight b6, rook to b8, and now both of black's pieces are attacked, and if the knight moves, then the rook would fall. So Gabor Papp plays the only move, rook to b5, so that he could move the knight. And now a4, attacking the rook, knight takes a4, and now not taking the rook, not exchanging pieces, but c7, the strongest move, just getting the pawn 1 square away from queening. And after knight to b6, rook to c5, challenging the rook, rook to b3, he has to decline the trade, and now rook takes f5, taking away the defender of the c8 square, which was preventing white from queening. So after rook takes f5, g takes f5, c8, queening, and black has to take, knight takes c8, and now of course not taking the knight, but take the rook, rook takes b3, and now if you count the material, the pawn situation is equal. But white is an exchange up, a clear exchange up. And another major factor is, if you look at the pawn structure, white has 1 pawn island, completely strong defended pawns, and black has the worst pawn structure you can imagine. He has an isolated pawn on the a file, which is just about to drop. There is no way he can defend it. He has 2 isolated doubled pawns on the f file and an isolated pawn on the h file. So just positionally and strategically, no way to hold the position. Nobody could hold this position, and especially against Vincent Keymer, who seems to be playing like Bobby Fischer when he was 20 in his peak. He tries king to g7, rook to b8, attacking the knight, knight d6, rook to a8, now simply taking the a pawn, knight to b5, rook takes a6. He tries knight to d4, attacking e2, knight to f4 defending, h6, e3, chasing the knight away, knight to b5, knight to h5 check, king h7, knight f6 check, improving the positioning of his knight, king to g7, knight to e8 check, king to g8, and rook to a5. And the point of this maneuver of getting the knight to e8 was such a high-class maneuver. King to g8, after king to g8 and rook to a5, the point of the knight being to e8 is to prevent the black knight from retreating to d6. And now, if the knight moves, of course, the f5 pawn is falling, and where can the knight move? The knight only has 1 square, the c3 square, and after the knight moves to c3, rook takes f5, and that's just an insurmountable material advantage, along with all the other deficits in the position. And I think this game was such a great display of attacking chess that I'm not sure that there is a super grandmaster capable of crushing somebody this brilliantly. Definitely one of the best games by Vincent Keymer, and one of many to come, I'm sure. Thanks very much for watching. I'll try to cover some more of Vincent's games from the Grenke Open, and I will look for some of his attacking brilliances before this tournament in 2017. I'm working with that right now. And stay tuned for more games by the brilliant German international master. Soon to be grandmaster, definitely. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers. Bye.